right, now let's do a bit of review. We know that we're at the end of the first quarter of 2025. Let's look at some sectors and see how they fared in this first quarter. The NGX is not looking so good, I can tell you that. But let's see if the fintechs have done better. We have the Chief Executive Officer and founder of MIM Finance Company Limited. That MIM is money in minutes. That's Mr. George Badejo Adegbenga. Mr. Adegbenga, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning, nice to be here.
Yeah, good to have you. So you are in the fintech space.
That's correct.
Well, some people will say we have seen a bit of stability in the first quarter of this year. Has it been that way for fintechs in this first quarter as we come to an end?
Surprisingly so. I think we've seen a promising performance, pretty much carrying on the trend that we saw last year. So I think this particular sector has shown resilience, which perhaps on the face of it, you think things are really, really difficult, but not at all. And I think for the fintech space, it shows that there are a lot of problems that fintechs are actually coming in and solving. So we've seen significant growth in that regard.
Would you say growth funding financially, or is it in adoption and acceptability by the
areas,
people? Wow.
In all areas. So we've seen 70% if you look at last year in terms of growth. We're seeing the same trend already carrying on. And also, if the World Bank blog actually reported that Nigeria continues to be a dominant player in the fintech space across Africa. You know, so we kind of take 1/3 of Africans' fintech. And it really shows that there is a lot of perhaps problems, gaps, and that's why the fintechs keeps on kind of growing within the Nigerian economy.
So the FX stability, I mean, we may not say that the value of the naira is applaudable, but we've seen a bit of stability for months now. Has that trickled down into fintechs operations?
Well, I think what the fintechs are actually doing is playing a part in solving some of those problems, right? And I think I would look at you know, investors' behavior, right? Last year, we saw around about 6 billion money coming into the sector, foreign money coming into the sector. And if you think about the challenges that we face with regards to FX situations, you know, these are the areas where the fintechs players are actually doing business and solving problems. So I think there is a problem, and fintech is actually seizing the opportunity to solve those kind of problems. And I think another emerging aspect to look at is AI, which ultimately is the future. And then you could see all the fintechs players now using AI.
But you still have to deal with competition with the traditional banks.
Oh yeah, well, we're seeing collaboration between them, you know, which is wise and smart to see that the banks are not seeing themselves as, oh, you know, we're unstoppable. You know, we're seeing proper collaboration, Standard Bank and Flutterwave, looking at the payment space. That actually is promising, that the banks are thinking, you know what, this is a force to reckon with, let's play with them.
So I would like to picture how this collaboration works, because you're supposed to be rendering like similar services. So how does it work that brings it collaboration and not competition?
Many ways, you know. So one, we've seen some banks kind of set up their own fintech, perhaps, you know, so a different platform in order to be able to, you know, add value. And we're also seeing partnership, right? You know, Flutterwave, for example, and Standard Bank, you know, in the payment space across Africa, right? So, you know, everyone is taking different approach, but not ignoring the fact that these are true challenges to a problem that perhaps the bank cannot solve within their own system.
So we talk about key market segments, and we see the fintechs seem to be heading in some direction. You have the buy now, pay later, seems to be picking up, and loyalty program. And then the gift cards, I know I experienced a bit of that, especially during the festive season. Yes,
we're seeing significant growth in that regard. And I would be more particular about the buy now, pay later, right? You know, which is an area Money Minutes is also playing in. So we're getting people to have access to smart mobile phones, you know, on finance, right? You know, and I think this is a big space. I can even quote some numbers with regards to what's going on in that regard. Well, give me 1 second.
So I think you have about 1.62 billion. That's the target, or
by the end of this year. Projection for the end of this year, which is enormous, and we're not even there yet. You know, we've not even scratch the surface in this particular space. And if you think about the runaway stock or runaway inflation, you cannot at the moment save up to buy a new TV, right? And that is what the fintech players are doing, so we would let you, get that TV now, today, and spread the money in the next 3 months. That way, you eliminate the risk that by the time you save up, the price of the TV has gone up.
Yeah, but the challenge with things like that before now had been data. You understand, what collateral do you have? What data do you have on potential customers? What about those with, bad intentions and all of that? So have you been able to handle all of those challenges?
Yes, technology has been used. The government has introduced a national collateral registry where you could register movable objects. So for us, all the phones, TVs that we offer and finance are all registered in the National Collateral Registry. And we're using technology as well, an alternative way of actually identifying where people live, what people do, in order to be able to kind of, figure out those that have got the propensity to pay and those that don't. So it's kind of like one of those, I would say, necessity model of invention, so we're coming up with ways to be able to kind of push on finance without relying on the credit bureau, which is kind of where we've experienced challenges.
Yeah, because we're supposed to have data that makes people easily traceable and reachable, and we are still lacking in as a nation.
We're still lacking, but alternative ways of doing this would help us get more data into the credit bureau, because ultimately that's where we need to be, right? But we need to figure out how can we enable people, right? If people don't have access to finance, they'll never get onto the system, right? So how do you unlock that space so you can have the data, then the growth will come.
Yeah, I'm just afraid. So we don't see fintechs falling out because of bad debts and,
Well, that would always be the case, right? Again, AI is playing a part in players being able to figure out how best to determine propensity to pay, right? And those are the things we're doing at the moment. And we believe that this year is going to be our year of kind of opening the doors with confidence, because we've been very, very risk adverse, because we've made some big mistakes with regards to credit risk. And AI is playing a huge part in allowing us to kind of resume lending within the Nigerian space.
We'll get back to AI, but still doing a little bit of retrospect. In 2024, the sector recorded 30% increase in the first half, but I think I saw a report that at the end of the year, inflow, even to the continent, reduced.
Yeah, I think that trend is similar towards the end of the year anyway, but we're seeing increases, and Money Point is a very, very interesting success story. Money Point is now a unicorn, or not a unicorn from Nigeria, right? So I think the future is bright, but it doesn't feel like that for most people on the street, but looking at all the numbers, looking at how people are doing, looking at the prospect, right? It's really, really promising. And from an investor standpoint, I think the investors that are going to do well are the ones that are willing to take a long-term view on Nigeria, right? Anyone coming in thinking we're going to come in and we're going to make our money in 2 years' time, perhaps Nigeria is not for you. But those that want to take a long-term view, they would smile back to the bank, I think.
Yeah, and I guess the fintechs have, if they really want people to feel them, they have to get down there. That's where the numbers are. And the income or the revenue may not be so high, but you have the numbers down there.
That's correct. We have the numbers.
But higher risk also.
Higher risk, but then with all this technology, we should be able to leverage on those.
And then you've talked about AI all through. AI is, we live with AI and live and sleep with AI now. So obviously it's a very integral part of what you do. But what about the issue of infrastructure in maintaining these AI-powered facilities?
Yeah, I think for us, there's so many gaps within the country in terms of infrastructural development. I think that would hopefully come, right? But right now it is here, it is working, right? And it's solving real problems.
And then the contactless payments.
Yes.
It's been introduced for a while, but it doesn't seem so popular, yeah?
Well, I don't think, I honestly believe that there is some regulations that is making some banks be able to use contact lens. And I think it's probably credit risk related, in my opinion. But I think it's about to open up, So I've read a few blogs about the fact that, banks, the central bank is already thinking about releasing this. And when that happens, it makes ease of using your cards, more prominent.
But what advantage does it have, though?
So if you think of it, we have a challenge with regards to network, electricity. Now with your contactless, you can just do shopping without any kind of connection. There could be a cap in terms of how much you could spend, right? I think that's the reason why it's not been released so far. So in the UK, for example, there's a limit that you can actually spend in the UK. And in Nigeria, if you have issues of fraud and stuff like that, if someone has got your card, they could actually spend up to that limit. And those are the kind of challenges, but I think that they've probably already cracked it for them to actually be looking at opening it back again.
So, I mean, I think I don't need to ask you this because you sound very optimistic. You think Q2 will be better than Q1?
100%. The signs are there. And if I speak from our business, we're definitely looking to kind of open up more products. Buy now, pay later, definitely one of them for us. And I'm seeing some of our other competitors looking the same way as well. So I honestly do believe that this year will be far more better than the year before. And the year before was actually better than 2023.
So the funding, though, the investment, is it more foreign or more domestic?
More foreign.
More foreign. Is that safe?
Well, that's what we need. Now, for the investors, and that's the reason why I said investors need to look long term, right? And there's a bit of stability in Naira, even though, we want proper stability, but there's been a stability there. And we're seeing investors coming in and, bringing money in. But I think we need more foreign investors, but we need those that are willing to kind of take a long-term view, right? And it will pay. But if you're wanting a short term, then I would say it's a bit tricky insofar as where the Naira is right now.
Yeah, maybe you go to the stock market or the fixed income.
Exactly, perhaps.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. George Badija Adegbenga, the Chief Executive Officer and Founder of Money Minutes. Sounds like you're always in a hurry.
Yes, it's Nigeria. We're always busy. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you.